Alright. Just give me a few minutes here, guys. Make sure everything's set up, and I'll get to chatting real quick, and go from there. Won't keep you waiting too long, so just put a couple notices out there. So just give me a second here. Just give me a second here. Sometimes I love this laptop. What else do I need to do? Put that up. I love this laptop. By the way, for those of you who are watching, whether you're watching live or after the fact, this is not a purple shirt. There's blue on it, and it does look purple, but I'm not wearing purple. It just how black comes on my screen, so I'll have to work on that. And you know who you are. So, let's see, get that off my screen. And we'll get going. By the way, here, for those of you who are watching, I think everything's set up live or after the fact. All right. This is not a. So it is 1:24 on my clock, and it does look purple. Almost 1:25 on my watch. So black comes on my screen. I'm just gonna be talking maybe at the max for like an hour. And you know this is just ideas I have for the show for. Racing is Life, and then the other side projects I have. So I'm just going to be talking about those, go a little bit in depth on them, what they'll entail, and then go from there. Trying to figure out a schedule for some actual episodes and not, videos like this or the intro video where it's, just me talking. I'm just going to be talking maybe at the max for like an hour. That's probably going to be my next thing I'll let everyone know about is when I'm going to start doing the Racing is Life podcast. I don't know if it's going to be... so I'm just going to be talking about those, go a little bit in depth. Not going to be this Thursday, but hopefully April 29th, if all goes according to plan, that will be my first episode. With that episode, I will be talking about the 1992 NASCAR Winston Cup season. So that's probably going to be my next thing I'll let everyone know about is the people I have that have subscribed so far. I would say it's probably close to 50-50 on racing fans versus, people who, I just, work with, friends with. So it's a good combination, I think, to have because you have, like I said, if it's 50-50, 50% are somewhat aware of the 1992 Winston Cup season. And for the other 50%, you might not have people I have that have idea what it entails, but considering this is a racing podcast, I'm going to be talking about racing topics. Racing fans versus, Now, the reason I'm doing the 1992 Winston Cup season is throughout the season there are so many storylines from beginning to end.
Somewhat aware of the 1992 wins.
Just for the beginning of the season, I mean, prior to the, in the 1991 NASCAR season, Richard Petty announces his retirement. He is the king of NASCAR. At this point, 200 career wins, stats that,
The reason I'm doing the 1992,
I don't have them up, but just look up Richard Petty's stats, and I can tell you, a lot of them are not going to be broken. Now, that's a topic for another day, because he has raced in the pre-modern era of NASCAR, which the modern era of NASCAR is 1972 to present. So, prior to 1972, they would have 50, 60 races on the schedule. And then, since 1972, it has gone from 20-some to up to this point where we're at 36 regular season races. So, Petty's stats were kind of inflated, not dissing him whatsoever, it's just the product of the time. But, yeah, just look up Richard Petty's stats, and it's impressive. But, so that's the top storyline. His rookie year was 1958 or 59, and then he's racing until 1992. So 35 years,
to this point we're at 36 regular.
So that's an impressive career. Right now, you're talking, to give a present day analogy, Kevin Harvick and Kurt Busch have been racing Sprint Cup races since 2000, 2001. So you're talking just right around 20 years. They still got to race for another 15 years to catch Richard Petty. And they're both in their mid to early 40s. So
right now you're talking,
that's the first topic. Some of the other drivers I'll talk about, that one in particular does not get a lot of mention when it comes to the 1992 season, and there's a reason for it. Prior to the 1992 season, your defending champion the past 2 years was Dale Earnhardt, which would have been his fourth and fifth championship. And then after 1992, he follows it up with his sixth and seventh championship in 1993 and 1994.
Some of the other drivers I'll talk about.
Nobody really talks about 1992 and Dale Earnhardt.
One in particular does not
let's just say he was didn't win the championship, and he was just slightly off as far as his championship setting pace, because had he
and then after 1992,
if he had been more competitive, say he didn't even win the championship, but he was one of the drivers in contention for the championship, that would have been an interesting storyline, because then if he's in contention come Atlanta, we're talking he's possibly going to tie Cale Yarborough's record of 3 straight championships, which at that time had not been done. And then, say, had he won the championship in 92, he's a 5-time champion if
he had been
history were to
win the championship,
play out the way it did in 93 and 94. So that's impressive. So we'll talk about Dale Earnhardt a little bit as well.
Then if he's in contention come Atlanta,
there were 6 drivers in contention for the championship,
which at that time had not been done.
At the final race at Atlanta, which is unheard of. Usually it might be like, say, 2 or 3. Not that, but 6 is unheard of. So you have drivers like who have an outside shot of winning, but they really need there's 2 tiers for the championship in 1992.
6 drivers.
The top tier is like your points leader going into the race, Davey Allison, Bill Elliott, and Alan Kulwicki, who are separated by Allison's the point leader. Elliott is 30 points back, and Kulwicki is 40 points back. That is doable. You can win the championship with that point system, because it's at that time, every position you were ahead of a driver was 5 points.
Top tier is
so just do the math. If you're 40 behind, you need to gain like 8 positions roughly. Now, if I won't digress too far into that.
Allison's the point leader.
I'll talk about that more whenever I do the 92 podcast. But getting back to the tiers,
you can win the championship.
Elliott, Allison, Elliott, and
at that time,
Kawicki have a great chance of winning the championship. And then you have the second tier with drivers like Kyle Petty, Mark Martin, and Harry Gant, who are points-wise within, they can still win it. But I think Mark Martin was 6th. He would literally need Kawicki, Elliott, and Allison to crash out for him to have a shot. And the same goes for Gant and Petty. So, yeah, they're able to win the championship, but they need a lot to happen. And then, obviously, I'll be talking a lot about Davey Allison, Bill Elliott, and Alan Kawicki, because, like I said, those are the 3 drivers that
Martin was 6th. He would literally
odds were pretty good one of them was going to win the championship. So I'll talk about more about them in depth. Davey Allison, part of the Alabama gang, and part of the Allison Racing family. Up and coming driver, so
obviously
this is
I'll be
his,
talking a lot about
his first real shot at a championship.
Davey Allison, Bill Elliott,
And his season was up and down,
odds were pretty good. One of them was
down, and yeah, there's a lot to go.
So I'll talk about Davey Allison. Davey Allison,
Bill Elliott comes in 1992 with a new team, Junior Johnson, who at this time is a 6-time championship winning car owner with the likes of Cale Yarborough and Darrell Waltrip. So the team is has been competitive, still winning races every year, but they're not the dominant team that they once were. But when they hired Bill Elliott, things were looking good initially. And as the season progresses,
Junior Johnson, who at this time is
Elliott is definitely still doing well.
winning car owner.
But come the end of the season, Elliott has the opportunity to win the championship.
The team is still has been competitive.
Last handful of races,
Still
the
winning
wheels
races
kind of
every
fall
year,
off
but
for
they're
him.
not the dominant team.
And then that leaves Alan Kawicki,
When they hired Bill Elliott,
owner driver.
things were
So
looking
he
good initially.
runs his own race team.
And as the season progresses,
Also contacted by Junior Johnson to race his car, but Alan's like, I want to do this myself.
Still doing well.
And so he, at this time, Kawicki's racing for himself, as I've said. Bill Elliott racing for Junior Johnson, still a top team in NASCAR. Davey Allison's racing for Robert Yates Racing.
And then
Up and coming team, definitely a solid team, right up, very similar with Junior Johnson. And then you have, like I said, Alan Kawicki racing for himself. Doesn't have the big bucks that these other teams have to put into, the race cars, tires,
at this
yada,
time,
yada, yada.
Kawicki's
So,
racing for himself.
Kawicki is definitely the underdog,
racing for
and
Junior Johnson, still a top team in the race.
somehow has, is in championship contention, because prior to this, Kawicki was he won a race.
A solid team right up, very similar.
Not every year, but he was roughly a 1 year,
Racing for himself.
1 win a year
Doesn't have the big
driver.
bucks that these other
And prior to this, was never a championship contender.
the race cars, tires. At this
Come, when I do this episode, you'll see why he's in contention. So that's 1992. I don't want to get into too much details.
Kawicki was a.
And you have a few other storylines. Jeff Gordon making his first career start,
every
which
year,
is
but
also
he was
Richard Petty's last start. That has been frequently mentioned.
One win a
before,
year drive.
in talking about this, but this topic is talked about some, a lot. So I want to try and offer some different viewpoints and give my take on it, because for me, being born in 1992, I had a pretty good
have a few other storylines. Jeff Gordon.
if you were to say, well, what happened the year you were born in NASCAR? For me, it was a whole lot. So we'll go from there, and that's the basic premise of that episode. And then go, obviously, at the end, what happened to these drivers, because sometimes in a few cases, it was tragic, and then
for me being born in 1992.
In other drivers' cases, they kind of, I wouldn't say fell off the map,
if you were to say, well, what happened to your
but
for me, it was
some drivers were near retirement, various things. So that will be the end of the episode, just talking about what happened.
That episode,
like I said, it is tragic.
and then go,
And
obviously, at the end, what happened to these drivers.
There's so many different ways these drivers went. So
Sometimes
all
in a
right.
few cases, it was
Now,
tragic, and then
with this is the Racing is Life podcast predominantly.
I wouldn't say fell off the map.
So I'm going to be talking a lot about racing, NASCAR,
Some drivers were near
World of Outlaws,
retirement.
IndyCar,
various things. So
various
that will
racing
be the end of the
series.
episode, just talking
So on my list, I have,
like I said, it was tragic.
NASCAR in Western
And
Pennsylvania. I live in Western Pennsylvania, so
There's so many
needless to
different ways
say, I want to talk about
All right.
racing
Now,
in Western Pennsylvania. And
with,
growing up
this
in
is
the
Racing is Life
late
podcast
90s,
predominantly.
early 2000s,
So I'm going to be talking a lot about racing, NASCAR. Some drivers were
Jennerstown and Motordrome, which were the two asphalt tracks
Various racing
around within an
series.
hour of me,
So on my list, I
they
have
were NASCAR sanctioned tracks.
NASCAR
So they're
in
both
Western Pennsylvania,
roughly a
Western
half mile.
Pennsylvania,
So they would,
say
some of the lower NASCAR
want to talk
series,
all right.
like what is now the
Pennsylvania.
Arkham
growing up,
Menards East and
in the
East series
late
came there. It was
90s,
Busch North
early 2000s,
back in the day, but some of your smaller NASCAR regional series came to Jennerstown. So talk about that a little bit, and
Motordrome,
maybe
which
some
were
big
two
series they
asphalt
brought,
tracks
because
within an hour of me. So on my
kind
list,
of
they
relate
were
to
NASCAR
the
sanctioned tracks.
Western Pennsylvania.
So they're both
Another top series that
roughly a
came
half
to
mile.
Jennerstown
So
in
they would-
particular was the
some of
American
lower
Speed
NASCAR
Association,
series,
a racing
what
series
is
from
now
the
the
founded in the late
Arkham
60s,
Menards East
and
East series
was a series until the mid
Busch
2000s.
early
back in the
2000s,
day,
but some of your
So,
smaller NASCAR
It was like
regional
it was a
series.
late model
Came to
base
Jennerstown,
series, and
Talk
a
about
lot
that
of
a
good
little
drivers
bit,
came from that
and
series.
Motordrome,
I just
maybe some
mentioned a
big
few of
series
them
brought,
in the
because
when I'm going to be talking about the
kind of
1992
relate to
season.
the
Alan
Western
Kowicki
Pennsylvania.
and Mark
Another
Martin
top series
came
like
from
that.
ASA. Mark Martin, very
So in
dominant.
particular was the American
Alan
Speed
Kowicki,
Association.
that was before he got into NASCAR. He was in ASA.
Late 60s.
So
and
that would be an interesting series to talk about,
2000s.
because they can kind of be correlated. So it
It
might
was
be
like
one
it was
episode.
a late
either.
model
I'm not sure.
series, and a lot of good drivers came from that series. I just mentioned
Racing
few of
video
them in the-
games.
when
Obviously, in my spare time, I play some video games.
Alan Kowicki and Mark Martin came from ASA.
See if I can
Mark
even.
Martin, very dominant.
I'm not even gonna try. But right behind me is
That
my
was before he got into
my
NASCAR, he was in
Xbox.
ASA.
So I do some racing on there.
That would be an interesting
And
series
I've
to talk
been
about.
Playing racing video games since
They
the
can kind of
Nintendo
be
64,
It was a late model. I'm not sure.
NASCAR 99, and then the NASCAR Thunder
Racing
series
video
2003,
Obviously, in my spare
and
time, I
then
play some video games.
2005 Chase for the Cup were two of the video games I played a lot growing up.
I'm not even gonna try.
And then
Right behind me is
NASCAR
my
08, 09,
Xbox.
and then as we've gotten into newer series, I've played them to various
And
extents.
I've been
So
playing
being
racing
that I
video
played
games since
my fair
the
share of
Nintendo
racing games, I can talk about
64.
that a little. How good they are. It's obviously a great discussion for the NASCAR video games because the mid 2000s considered the golden era of NASCAR video games. And I will say, if I were to just do a ranking system, 03 and 05 are going to be in the top 5, probably.
As we've gotten into newer series,
Definitely the tops for the NASCAR. I've tried the NASCAR Heat series lately, 4 and 5. It's okay,
how good they are.
but
It's obviously
if your
a great
season
discussion for NASCAR
is
video
predominantly
games
a majority
the
of
mid 2000s,
mile and a half tracks, and I can't win on mile and a half tracks,
NASCAR video.
yeah, you're not going to want to play the
I
game.
will say, if I were to just do
Just
a ranking
saying.
system,
So
03 and 05
I'll be talking about
are going to be
video games in some form or another.
as we've gotten into newer series.
Definitely the tops for the NASCAR. So we got next on the list.
I've tried
I
the
briefly
NASCAR
spoke
Heat
about
series lately.
last time about Rob Moroso. 1990 NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie of the Year. At that time, he was born in 1968. So if you do the math, he's in his early 20s when he's getting into NASCAR. And at that time, that is unheard of. We're talking about video games, piggybacking on the ASA part. In your 20s, you're racing in regional series like ASA. I briefly spoke about you're not supposed to be racing at the top levels of NASCAR in your early 20s. 1990 NASCAR Winston Cup. This is unheard of. So, and Moroso, prior to 1990, in the late 80s, was racing in the Busch Series, now what is the Xfinity Series, and he's winning. I believe his first full-time season, he finishes second in the championship. And then the following year, he wins the championship, all in his early 20s. You're not supposed to be racing at the top levels of NASCAR in your early 20s. Doing some research in that, everyone, there was, some drivers and crew members and stuff that were like, what is this kid doing? I mean, it was unheard of. You're basically, for you to get into NASCAR, you have to be right around 30. Here he is winning a championship, I believe his first, and then come 1990, he's in Winston Cup. So we can talk about, I'll be talking about him, his career, and doing some research. It's just a few years later that you have another young driver. What is this kid doing? Coming into NASCAR, it was unheard of, and ends up winning at the end of his career 93 races, right around 30. And also at that time was winning a championship, roughly the same age as Rob Moroso. Come 1990, he's in talking about Jeff Gordon. And so Jeff Gordon is largely believed to be the first young driver to come into the NASCAR Winston Cup Series. Yeah, he has the most success, but it wasn't the first. But that's why we'll talk about Rob Moroso, because between Moroso and Gordon, you start seeing younger drivers starting to get shots at NASCAR to varying degrees of success. And then, so 1990 to present, we'll talk about rookies and how it has evolved from this time, because prior to that, like I said, I can't stress it enough. Drivers in their young 20s are not supposed to be racing in the top series of NASCAR. So that would be an interesting topic. I have most of my research done on that. A few Excel spreadsheets. So, and then what we got next? I have a racing movie tournament like I'm doing with the James Bond. I don't know if I'm going to do that. So I have that on there, but I might scratch that. Next up, visiting local lost speedways in Western Pennsylvania. Thank you for the idea, Dale Earnhardt Jr., with your TV show on NBC's streaming service, Peacock TV. Dale Jr. has a show, Lost Speedways, where he goes to various racetracks around the United States predominantly, and goes into the history of them. Well, there's a few around here in Western Pennsylvania that I'd like to go to. Off the top of my head, Challenger Raceway in nearby Jacksonville, PA, is one on the top of my list. Dale Jr. has a show, Lost Speedway. It is situated between Indiana and Salzburg, around the United States. So that one's pretty close, and definitely one track I like going to growing up. And then I mentioned earlier, we have two asphalt tracks within an hour of me, Jennerstown and Motordrome. They're not racing at Motordrome anymore. So Motordrome would be another cool one to go to. I went there once, 2004. So thankfully, I was able to go to that for that event. So those two are probably at the top of the list. Might have some other ones I might try and look at. We'll wait and see, but
I mentioned earlier,
definitely,
asphalt tracks.
those are going to be similar to this, where they're going to be like a video format.
Jennerstown and Motordrome.
So,
I'm not racing at Motordrome anymore. So
that's that.
Motordrome would be another cool one.
For racing, I have,
thankfully, I was able to go to that.
2 more topics I wrote down,
For that event.
and I'm sure as I get more ideas, I'll write them down, hopefully.
Might have some
Being that I live in Indiana County, we have the Indiana Mall.
Those are going to be
Growing up, on a weekend in March, usually mid to late March, they would put a bunch of race cars in the mall, and then you'd just be able to look at them, late models, modified sprint cars.
2 more topics I wrote down.
The cars you'll see at your local racetrack. So for me, that would be in this area.
Being
Jennerstown, Motordrome, Marion Center, Dog Hollow.
Growing up,
maybe even Lernerville.
On a weekend in March.
So you'd look around at the race cars a little bit, and then they had a booth of all the schedules for the various racetracks.
Late models.
So needless to say, as a young kid growing up, this was like a late 90s to mid 2000s thing.
Cars you'll see at your local.
Parents made sure to take me every year, and my brother probably just went.
Jennerstown, Motordrome.
But
Marion
growing up, you would go to that, you'd come up with 10, 15 schedules.
So you'd look around at the race cars a
Well,
little bit.
I went up there this year because it was a couple weeks ago in March, and it was Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I'm off on Thursday, so I'm like, I'll go up here, see what it's like.
Late 90s to mid 2000s.
Well, let's just say
every year. And
I looked, I went in, got the schedules, I was out within 10 minutes. It was probably closer to
You'd go to that.
So that was a thing I enjoyed so much.
Well,
I loved going to. I looked forward to that weekend growing up,
in March.
and just to be there.
Thursday, Friday,
going there this year, and it's like,
off on Thursday, so I'm like,
wow.
I'll go up here see what it's like.
Wait, a complete polar opposite.
Let's just
Still
say
enjoyed it, but
every year.
you're not going to enjoy something being there for less than 10
The
minutes.
schedules.
And I've gone there like a handful of times, past, because between college and
I enjoyed
various
so
things,
much.
I've only gone maybe like 2.
Well,
I know 2 times this year included. One other time I was just driving around. I'm like, oh, I'll stop there. But I just want to talk about that because obviously then, one of the things you can talk about, well, malls are
a complete polar opposite.
not what they once
Still
were.
enjoyed it, but
So you have that whole thing, but I just want to talk about it because
and I've gone there.
it was a cool experience, and there's another idea I could piggyback off on as well is growing up. I met a handful of NASCAR Winston Cup drivers at that mall and in the surrounding area. So being that I was so young, I do remember a lot of them, but that's some memorabilia I wish I would have kept better care of. Of course, being in your age for single digits, you're not always the smartest. So those are 2 things I can piggyback off of for an idea.
I met a handful of
Old tracks that I'd like to see return to the NASCAR schedule. If you're any sort of a NASCAR fan, you frequently see this in the talks about the Nashville Fairgrounds.
That's some memorabilia.
And another topic is let's return NASCAR to the roots because there's a segment of the NASCAR population that has not liked the direction that NASCAR has taken.
Those are 2 things I can piggyback off.
Now, of course, this change happened right around the turn of the millennium.
Old tracks.
So
Return to the NASCAR schedule.
late 90s, early 2000s.
If you're any sort of a NASCAR fan, you frequently see this.
Especially in the Truck Series and Busch Series at the time, they had short tracks. So in large part, these tracks were around half a mile, or give or take like a mile. But they offered competitive racing, and they were tracks that they're not these big. Like Bristol is, say, considered a stadium in part because the track is surrounded by seats. And Daytona, you can get at its peak, you can get 100 some thousand in there. Same thing with Indy. But these local tracks, short tracks, like off the top of my head, I'm thinking Myrtle Beach, Hickory, South Boston, IRP, which is the short track right next to, or within short distance of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. These tracks, I don't know what the attendance figures would be, but in the tens of thousands. And Daytona, people enjoyed the racing. So some of them have ceased to exist. But these local tracks, short tracks. But some of them still host local, weekly racing. IRP, so which is the short track. That's a whole big topic, and I want to talk about it. Whether it be the tracks, I'd like to see, ranking them say from 1 to 10. I don't know what 1 being the one I'd like to see return on the schedule most, and then just talk about, is this even plausible? People enjoyed the racing, so that's another topic. So some of them, as far as racing, that's it. Please feel free to offer your thoughts, whether you get on the chat now while I'm still talking. I will try and pay attention to that as best as possible, and say if I'm talking about the side projects and I see you commented on a racing thing, I'll wait till the end of the video. As far as racing, or if you're watching after I'm done with this live stream, please feel free to comment. Offer your thoughts. Any ideas, I'm willing to listen to, and I'll offer my thoughts and go from there. So now that I'm done with the racing ideas, let's talk about the few ideas I have for like side projects. And say if I'm talking about the side right now, I've mentioned the James Bond movie tourney that I have. As far as my notes, I believe there's 8 matches in the first round. Any ideas? I have over half of them done with notes. So I have the 4 categories that I'm going to be basing them off of. Let's talk about to which one I like more. A few ideas I have, which I think is better. So I'm mostly done with that. So maybe this Saturday, next Saturday, I'll talk about the first round because there's 8 matchups that I have. And as far as my notes, the 4 topics that I'll be basing the movies off of are pre-title sequence. Does this set up the movie? Does the pre-title sequence, make you really think, oh man, I want to continue watching this movie, which I think is better. Second part is mostly done with that. So how did the actor portraying James Bond do in that film? And 3, the plot. The 4 topics. Is the plot interesting? That'll be based on the movies. I mean, there are definitely James Bond films where like, man, this is pre-title sequence. There are others that you're just like, does the pre-title sequence, this is lame, make you really think, oh man, I want to continue watching. And then you have the villain, because I think, in large part, how did a great villain can really make a Bond movie good in that film? It helps. There's multiple things you can that make a Bond movie great. But I think villain is one of the top ones. So those are the 4 ideas. Well, you might be thinking, Zach, what happens if you have, for a movie, you like the one movie for 2 reasons, and you like the other one for the other 2 reasons? You tie. Which one moves on? I have 3 tiebreaker categories, which I will tell you at the end of the series to keep you in suspense a little bit. That way, I can say, okay, I like this movie better for that and that. Okay, that one's moving on. Is one of the top ones. So those are the 4 ideas. That's it for the James Bond. Pretty basic idea. Definitely very interesting looking at the notes for a movie. The notes I've made and everything. Another tournament movie idea I have is World War II movies. You have your fair share of World War II movies. And it just so happens that I divided it in 2 brackets. Okay, that one's moving on. As of right now, I'm thinking 16 and 16, so 32 movies. That's it for the James Bond. And still working out some of the finer points, but one side of the 16 bracket will be
Another
older
tournament
movies,
idea,
and then
idea I have
the other
is
side will be
World
newer
War II
movies. And
you have your fair share of World War II.
I do this because I think
and
it's.
it just so happens
I don't.
that way,
I have talked to a few people about this.
two brackets.
A couple guys at work.
As right now, I'm
And
thinking 16.
we think
16,
if you were to just
32
put all the
movies,
32 movies together, a
and
lot of the newer movies
still
are
working
going
out
to
some of
beat
the definitely very
the
but
old movies.
one
So
side of the
I want an
16
old movie versus a
bracket
newer movie
will be older
in the
movies.
finals. So the best of the
And then
best from the older
the other
movies
side will be newer movies and
versus the best of the best of the newer movies.
I do this because
And to give you a
I think it's
timeline,
just so
I don't.
I have talked to a few people.
1990
about this,
present,
couple
I'm
guys at work.
thinking
Right
there
now,
are
I
going to be the
think
modern day
we
movies,
think
so that's
if
going to
you were
include
just put
movies
all the 32
like
movies
Saving
together,
Private Ryan,
a lot of the
Dunkirk,
newer movies,
Valkyrie, Defiance, to name a few. More than likely, those films are going to be on. Like I said, if it's 16, I have more than 16 films, so I'm going to have to narrow it down. But and then,
versus the best of the best of the newer movies. I do this.
and the funny thing is, with the older movies, you have movies that were filmed during World War II,
Present, I'm thinking.
and then you have movies up to the
modern day
70s.
movies, so that's going to include
So
movies.
that's the older one.
Ryan, Dunkirk,
That's the older bracket.
Valkyrie.
So in that you have movies like The Longest Day,
more
Battle
than
of the
likely those films
Bulge,
are gonna be on. Like I said, if it's
Midway.
16, I have more than 16 films.
So just to name a few.
But and then
so
newer movies.
like I said,
And the
an older
funny thing
movie
is with
in the
older
finals is going to
movies,
go up
you have
against
movies
a newer
that were
movie.
filmed during World War II.
And once I have
And then
ideas
you
on
have
how
movies
to
up the
rank those
70s.
movies, I'll put that on the
So,
group.
that's the
or
older one.
Might do a small video.
That's the older
here.
bracket.
I'm not sure.
Valkyrie. So in that you have
But-
movies like The Longest Day.
And an interesting thing, if you caught this, I'm talking about modern movies being
Midway.
1990 present.
So
Older movies
to
are
name a
from
few.
World War II, so
so
the 40s.
like I said, an older
till the
movie
70s.
in the finals is going to go up against.
What about the 1980s? Didn't forget about it, but
And
not that
once
many
I have
movies.
Ideas
World
on
War
how
II
to rank
wise,
those movies, I'll
and
put that on the group. That's the older one.
might do a small video.
Video.
It's a topic for another day.
I'm not sure.
But there's not that many movies, and
But and an
the movies in the
interesting
80s
catch that this.
our lower
I'm
movies
talking
are
about
not
modern
like big
movies, but
blockbusters or
present.
like these movies back in the 60s and 70s.
Older movies are from World War II.
So that's a topic for another
the
day.
40s.
But there's not much coming from
Older
out of the
70s.
1980s. So
What about the 1980s? Didn't forget about it, but not
see,
that many
I
movies.
think
World War II wise.
that is
And-
it. I'm still trying to come up with some history related ideas for
It's a
side
topic for another
projects.
There's not that many movies, and but
Just to give you
the movies in the 80s.
some of my interest.
Lower movies.
I
are
forgot
like
to
big
put on the
blockbusters,
Facebook post. I have my
movies back in the 60s.
history thesis / capstone that I want to talk about church committee. So that's on
Not much
there.
coming from out of the 1980s.
What,
about the
which deals with the intelligence community and the first reforms of that community.
That is it. I'm still
with
trying to come up
the
with some
reforms coming from
history-related
the
ideas
United
for
States
side
Congress.
projects.
And my topic largely focused on the
Just
Senate
to give you
because the House committee was
some of my interest.
not that great.
I forgot to put on the
A lot of
Facebook
corruption
post, I have
issues and various issues.
my history thesis / capstone that I want to talk
And
about.
so I want to talk about that, which
which
actually,
deals with the intelligence
Walter Mondale,
community,
former
and
vice
the first
president
reforms
who just
of that
passed
community.
away
That is
yesterday.
it. I'm still trying to come up with the
He was a
reforms
member of
from
the church
United
committee
States
and actually one of
Congress.
the
And my
top
my topic largely
members
focused on the Senate.
and one of the most
because
active
the House
members.
committee was some of my
So,
interest.
not that great. That's one less
A lot of corruption issues and various
individual we
issues.
have that is alive to tell about the church
And
committee.
So I want to talk about that.
And obviously, an important part of history is listening to the people that lived it.
Former vice president.
That is
who just
called
passed away
oral
yesterday.
history, and it is
He was a member
one of the
the
things
church
I'll take away from
committee and actually
college
one of the
is it's a topic
top
that,
members.
well, just an idea in general
one
that
of
is
the
not
most
done
active
enough.
So
You can have your thoughts on
one last
history,
corruption issue.
whether you're
Individual we
right or
have
wrong, you can have your
is alive
thoughts.
to tell about the
But
church
the most
committee's
important part of history is
and
listening to
obviously
the
an
people that
important part of
lived it.
history is
know,
listening to the people that
They will give
lived it.
you,
The former vice president. That is
a
called oral
view of
history,
how it happened, and it's
is
not going to be
one of the things I'll
reinterpreted.
take away from college.
So,
it's a topic
it is.
Just an idea in general that is not done enough.
It's
you can have
what
your thoughts on
happened
history,
is what you're gonna hear. So,
whether you're right or wrong, you can have your thoughts.
Went off on a little
But
tangent
the
there,
most important
but
part of history is listening to the people that
like I
learn
said,
history.
one of the biggest things I took away from college was
They will
oral
give you,
history is important.
a
Interviewing people that were there
view of
for
how it
whatever
happened,
event you're talking about.
and it's not going
Very
to be
important.
things I'll take away from college.
So let me think some other ideas real quick, and I'll get off here. Any other history?
What happened?
I like World War II history, so that's obviously a great encyclopedia of stuff I can do.
Like I said, one of the biggest things I took away from college was oral history is important.
Should have wrote some ideas down, but
Whatever event.
for me, I'm into history.
So
Some other ideas. Say 1900 present. I always said if you're familiar with college courses,
I like World War II history.
if you have to take U.S. history classes, you have to usually take a survey class. Well, your survey classes are U.S. history from the beginning of the United States to about the Civil War. And then if you want to take later stuff, it's Civil War to the present day.
Say 1900
Um, So
if you're familiar with college courses, like World War II history,
with those, it's like I like the later stuff. So if you want me to talk about something there you think would be interesting, cool, I'll bring it up. Now that's not to say, pre-1900 I'm not interested. Just thinking pre-1900s,
to about the Civil War.
local history of Johnstown Flood, I can talk about that.
Civil War to the present day.
You got people who aren't Andrew Carnegie, Henry Frick, who are local figures of history in Pennsylvania. You can talk about them.
So
Civil War, the movie Gettysburg, which has a lot
now
of,
that's not to say
is one of the main reasons I'm into history. So I can always talk about Gettysburg. That's a couple hours down the road for me.
local history of Johnstown Flood, I can talk about that.
And I don't know. There's just a few that I'm coming up with from the top of my head.
Andrew Carnegie.
So feel free to give me your thoughts on that.
Figures of
And I'll
history.
look into it and give you some feedback.
Civil War.
So another thing before I get off here,
is one of the main reasons I'm into history.
I do have a couple road trips planned, whether they're just a day
down the road for me.
or, in my case, I'm taking a week off of work, 9 days.
I don't know. There's just a few.
Three of those days I'm going to go see races at Port Royal. So I might do a video stream or something there with a camcorder. Me driving there,
give you some feedback.
something along those lines. So just
So another
to go back to the
before I get off
racing,
here,
just something cool, something a little bit different.
I do have a couple.
Right now I do have plans to go to Port Royal for Rumble by the River with the Lucas Oil Dirt Late Model Series, end of August. And then I'm trying to figure out some maybe May 1st, I'm going up to Latrobe Speedway to see the Renegades of Dirt Modifieds. I don't know if I'm going to be ready to do streaming or something for that.
To go back to the racing,
But
something cool, something a little bit different.
I have 2 weeks of vacation to use.
Right now I do have plans.
So I'm trying to figure out some maybe 1 or 2 day events that I might want to do. There's a racetrack down in West Virginia Motor Speedway. That's opening up, and with that, this track looks cool.
trying to figure out some
videos of
maybe
it. So I might go down there. So as I come up with those ideas, I will bring them up and figure out if I want to do anything live while I'm there. So let me see if there's anything I'm missing on here, which Facebook, no, I do not see any comments. So this is the video. If you can do me a favor, like this video, subscribe to my channel here at Rabbitslinger Media. So I will put my group page on the chat here.
on here.
I'm still
Facebook,
learning the
no, I do not see any comments.
bits and ends of this, you know.
So
I understand it in large part, but there's still
this is the
holes
video.
and stuff I have to,
you know,
figure out. But
like
it's coming
video,
along. So just ask to be a member of my Facebook group page. I will gladly
Media.
accept you. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, and
I will put my group page
please
in the
offer your
chat
thoughts.
here.
I appreciate it. You know,
Still learning
you might be sitting on a really great idea. I'm of the belief. Yeah, I have a lot of great ideas, but it's coming along. You guys, if you're watching, might have a good idea as well. So please feel free to share it in the comments on the Facebook group. I would appreciate it. So that's that. It is just after 2 o'clock.
I appreciate it. You know,
And that's it for this stream. I will keep you updated as far as the Racing is Life podcast and the James Bond movie tournament first round. Those are the next two topics. So once I figure that out, I will let you know. All right. Have a good day, everyone.
Feel free to share it in the comments on the Facebook group.